Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Keats Pod. Now, today's episode, it'll be a bit different to what I usually do. Now, for the people who both know me and don't know me, I'm a sports fanatic. And AFL footy, also known as Australian rules football to the overseas listeners, is my favourite sport in the world. So, in this episode, I'll be discussing my AFL 2025 predictions. This includes my summary on every AFL team this season and where they'll finish on the ladder at the end of this AFL season, the most improved player from last season, the most exciting player this season, Brownlow medal winner, and who I believe will win the AFL 2025 Premiership Cup. Now, what I'll do is first I'm going to speak about Richmond because, in my opinion, even though they had a big win last Thursday, I think Richmond will still finish on the ladder. Now, why I believe they'll finish last on the ladder? Yeah, I believe they'll finish last on the ladder because, well, firstly, they have a very young and inexperienced list. They've lost Liam Baker, Shea Bolton, Jack Graham, Daniel Rioli, Dustin Martin, and Marlon Pickett, who are premiership legends at the club. What are the positives about the club? They've picked up good young talent in the 2024 draft with picks 1, who was Sam Laidlaw, pick 7, which is Josh Smiley, pick 12, which is Taj Houghton, pick 14, which is Jonty Foal. Also, Tommy Lynch stayed. He didn't leave. There were suggestions that perhaps Collingwood were chasing him hard and he was going to go there, but he's decided to stay. He's a guy that can still kick you 50 goals per season. That's how talented he is. So now we'll move on to what the negatives are about the club. They appear to have a long road ahead and a few more years where they're tipped to finish close to the bottom of the ladder. Tommy Lynch has been injury-riddled last 2 seasons, and he's only played 8 games in those 2 seasons. This has been a big disappointment for Richmond Footy Club and their fans. In my opinion, what they need to do to not finish on the bottom of the ladder, firstly, Tom Lynch, he needs to kick 60 goals this season. He needs to be as fit as possible and play at least 20 games for him to do so. He's actually kicked more than 60 goals in a season 3 times in his career. He's now 32 years of age. He's probably got this year, perhaps next year, where he's capable of kicking 60 plus a season. So anyway, Richmond supporters, if you don't want to see your club finish on the bottom, you really need this guy to win your games off his own boot. Now, will Adamuzze keep his job at the end of the season if Richmond finish on the bottom? My opinion is yes. They're not expected to do as well as last year with players departing from the club, such as Liam Baker, who went to West Coast with Jack Graham. Shea Bolton went to Fremantle. Daniel Rioli went to Gold Coast. Dustin Martin and Marlon Pickett have retired. So all these guys are quality players. Now, they finished on the bottom when they had all these players. They're not expected to do as well when all these guys are gone. So, look, Richmond are going to cop some hidings this year. They're going to be competitive games as well, but I believe no matter what, Adamuzze, he'll keep his job for next season. Now, West Coast. I believe they're going to finish second last on the ladder, which is 17th position. They're still a very young and inexperienced list who will be competitive when playing at home, but will struggle and deal with blowout losses when they play interstate. That's why I believe they're going to be finishing second last on the ladder. What are the positives about the club? They recruited Liam Baker and Jack Graham, who are premiership legends at Richmond. They've got Matt Owies, who's a more than handy goal sneak, who played at Carlton. And also, they're going to be relying on the improvement of Harley Reid. So there's plenty of upside of Harley Reid. I'll be speaking to him throughout this pod. So, yeah, Harley Reid, he's an extraordinary talent. What are the negatives about the club? Look, they're still a very young, inexperienced list. Rumours of Harley Reid potentially leaving to a Victorian club, either at the end of this season or next season, has been swirling around. How can they not finish on the bottom of the ladder this season? So, a few things. Harley Reid needs to significantly go up another level with his footy. Look, there's plenty of upside to him. It'll be second year in the comp this year. And look, we saw what he could do last year. He's brilliant. He's someone that can really win a game off his own boot and really, carry a team and really, he's the player you want in your team, right? So there's plenty of upside of Harley Reid, and you really need him up another gear. Oscar Allen's another guy, right? You need him to kick more than 50 goals this season. So he did this back in 2023. He was injured a fair bit last year. He couldn't do it, but he is someone that can kick bags of goals and win West Coast games of footy. So you need him to fire up. Now, a bit more about Harley Reid. Look, I believe he's going to be the best player in the AFL in 2 years' time. Many predict he'll be the first $2 million a year paid player. West Coast will have to pay him similar to this money to not entice him to return to a Victorian club. For people that don't know, he grew up in Bendigo and he's a Geelong supporter. He's a massive Joel Selwood fan. So, look, there are rumours that there's a few of these Victorian clubs who are going to offer him a $2 million per year deal. I don't know how many years for, but look, he's an extraordinary talent, Harley Reid, and Victorian clubs are really going to chase him hard. So he's going to want to see how West Coast go this year, if they improve or not. But yeah, he's got some tough calls to make in the next year or two, Harley Reid. Now we'll go to Essendon. I believe Essendon are going to finish 16th on the ladder. Now, why I believe they'll finish 16th? One reason is the loss of Jake Stringer. He's a guy that can kick you 40 goals in a season. They didn't really get anything for him either. GWS, they didn't give him back to Essendon a similar caliber player at trade period. Another thing is they didn't recruit any young players from different clubs over the off-season. What are the positives about the club? Now, one thing I'll say is the recruitment of young gun Isaac Kako. He looks like an excitement machine. I'm going to speak about him a fair bit throughout the pod. I actually watched when Essendon played Geelong in a Prague game, and he played really, really well. He's a type of player that they've been looking for a number of years. So as long as he stays fit, Essendon will keep playing him. So here's one positive I can think of right now, the recruitment of Isaac Kako. What are the negatives about Essendon Football Club? Finding consistent goal scorers without Jake Stringer, who kicked 42 goals last season for them. Essendon believe Cole Langford, Peter Wright, and Nate Caddy are the players in the forward line expected to step up and kick bags of goals in Jake Stringer's absence, but time will only tell. What needs to happen for Essendon to finish high on the ladder? And firstly, Ben McKay needs to play all Australian caliber football in defence. He really needs to beat his opponent week in, week out. Don't have him kick more than 3 goals. And look, Jacob Wittering, he got all Australian fullback last year. Now, Ben McKay's bigger than him. He's 6'8" tall. Jacob Wittering's 6'5" tall. Look, he's a bigger unit than Jacob. Jake is more agile, a better athlete, you could say. But look, Ben McKay, he's an extraordinary talent. He does have the potential to be the best fullback in the league, but he really needs to show this. He really needs to be a general down there. He needs to make it tough for the opposition to kick big bags when Essendon play against them. We've also got here Peter Wright, also known as 2 Metre Peter. He needs to return to his 2022 best and fairest form. Now, he kicked more than 50 goals that season, so he is the type of guy in Jake Stringer's absence that is capable of kicking 50 or so goals as long as he stays fit. So, look, if Essendon want to have a chance of pushing for finals, they really need Peter Wright up and running, because in the last 2 seasons, he's only played 24 games due to being injury-prone too much. So, and another thing is Darcy Parish. Now, Darcy Parish is a gun midfielder. His form back in 2021 was brilliant. He got over 700 disposals in the 23 games he played, and he also got All-Australian selection that year. So, look, last season he was played with injury, only played 12 games. But look, Darcy Parish, he's a player. They really need him up and running. Really needs to get in there, help Zach Merritt win contestant footy and just play hard footy in the midfield to help him out. We keep going to St Kilda. So I believe, look, St Kilda, I've got them finishing 15th. The reasons why I believe they'll finish 15th, I don't believe they have the talent on their list to win 13 games, which is the amount of games you need to win minimum to play finals in AFL footy. They didn't recruit any gun players from different clubs over the off-season either. So they've been trying really hard to get gun players, but they're just not luring them in. What are the positives about the club? look, they've got Ross Lyon as head coach, and he's highly regarded as one of the best football brains in the league. They have one of the better ruckmen in the competition, Ron Marshall. Now, Nasiah Wanganeen-Malira is expected to be their best player potentially this season. A lot of people think he could even be the most improved player in the AFL next season. So Nasiah Wanganeen-Malira, he's one to look out for. They need him fit and raring. They need him playing more than 20 games if St Kilda have any chance of winning more games than expected. What are the negatives about St Kilda Footy Club? They haven't been able to recruit a gun midfielder from a different club, which they really, really need. They are missing another gun midfielder or two, all-Australian calibre, to help catapult them up the ladder. St Kilda have a lot of money freed up on their salary cap, and they've been trying to throw big money around to lure a superstar player from a different club to their club. They offered Finn Callahan from GWS a contract worth $1.7 million per year over 10 years, and he rejected it. So that's big, big money to just knock back. So that's unbelievable. They've also chased hard and offered good money to Zach Merritt, plays Essendon, and Tyson Stengel from Geelong. However, they weren't able to lure them to the club. So look, they're throwing money at gun players everywhere, but they're just not luring them in. I guess they just need more of a winning culture, and they need to show the players that they're capable of playing finals year in, year out to really attract players. What needs to happen for them to finish higher on the ladder? First thing, Max King needs to return to being a forward who kicks 50 goals in a season. He did this back in 2022. He needs to keep doing it, because at the moment, look, he's twin brothers from Ben King from Gold Coast. In my opinion, Ben King has been the better player. He's kicked more goals. So this is really a goal for Max King to try and have a better year than his brother, who's playing interstate. So, look, Max is capable of kicking more than 50 goals. He needs to do it this season if Saints are going to win more and more games and potentially push for finals. They also need Jack Steele to go up another level with his footy. He's now 29 years of age, and I believe when he's fully fit, he is St Kilda's best player. So they really need him fit and raring to go if they're going to win a lot more games this year at St Kilda Footy Club. Now, next club I'm going to talk about is North Melbourne. The North Melbourne Kangaroos. I'll predict they're going to finish 14th. Why I believe they'll finish 14th, they finished second last on the ladder last year. Even though I believe they will win a few more games this season, I believe with their playing list, they won't be winning more than 10 games this season. That's just my opinion, but I think they will definitely improve from last season. What are the positives about the club? They recruited Jack Darling, who's kicked over 500 goals for West Coast. Adam Simpson actually told North Melbourne, people that don't know, Adam Simpson is actually a champion player at North Melbourne, played over 300 games. He still has connects there, still talks to people there. He told North Melbourne that Jack Darling treats his body like a temple at the age of 32. So Adam Simpson has helped Jack Darling get recruited North Melbourne in some ways. They've also recruited Caleb Daniel, who's a premiership player at the Doggies. He's a little whippet, good skills, plays backline. And then you've also got Luke Parker, who's a premiership player and a champion player at Sydney. So Luke Parker's getting on a bit. He's early 30s, but he's got a good couple of years. He can really help out North Melbourne win some games. Also, Harry Sheasel expected to improve his game to become an elite midfielder. He's a very good young talent. They also have the best coach in the league, Alistair Clarkson. So he's a full-time premiership coach, highly regarded as arguably the best coach of all time. So the fact he's there is, it's really good for the club, especially with this Hawthorn saga that happened not long ago. I won't speak too much about it, but it looks like it's been put to bed, and now he can move on now and really focus on North Melbourne and coaching them properly to win games of footy. What are the negatives about North Melbourne? They still have a very young and inexperienced playing list. They'll be expected to be blown away in a few games, especially when they play against the better teams in the competition. What needs to happen for North Melbourne to finish higher on the ladder? Both Cam Zerha and Nick Larkey need to kick 50 goals plus per this season. Cam Zerha has never kicked more than 50 goals in a season. Nick Larkey has done it back in 2023 3. So Nick Larkey's shown he's talented enough to do it. I think Cam Zerha's also talented enough to do it. That they really need bags of goals from these guys if they're going to win more games than expected this year. Harry Sheasel needs to go up another level in his footy. It's only his 3rd season, but he's a gun. Adelaide Crows. Now, I predict they're going to finish 13th on the ladder. They didn't recruit any gun players in the off-season. In my opinion, Adelaide need another gun midfielder to help Jordan Dawson in the midfield. So that's just a couple of reasons why I believe they'll finish around 13th and won't be playing finals this season. What are the positives about Adelaide Football Club? Now, Riley Thilthorpe has the potential to be a star forward in the competition if he's given the opportunity to play deep forward this season instead of Tex Walker. What are the negatives about Adelaide Footy Club? There is a lot of pressure on their coach, Matthew Nicks, this season. He has been their coach since 2020, and they haven't played finals between now and 2020. What needs to happen for Adelaide Crows to finish high on the ladder? Isaac Rankin needs to go up another level in his footy and kick 50-plus goals this season. He's definitely talented enough to do it. Also, Riley Thilthorpe needs to play as a deep forward and kick 50-plus goals this season. He's a huge unit. I'm a fan of him, and I believe he's very talented. He's 6'6" tall in height. He's only 22 years of age. Now, Tex Walker needs to play up the ground when he's selected in the same team as Riley, so he can play deep forward as he's the future of the club. So, look, this Riley Thilthorpe, he could be anything. He could be the next star midfielder. You know, he's massive. He's got like Fraser Garrick's arms. He's huge. I believe he's someone that, God, he could be the next guy that can kick 80 to 100 goals in a season. I'll rate him that highly. This guy, he's only 22. He's got a lot more upside. He's got a bright future ahead of him. And what I've seen of him, I think he can be really, really good for that club. Melbourne Demons. I predict they're going to finish 12th on the ladder. Well, I believe they'll finish around 12th. Now, there were cultural issues within the club that created media scrutiny last season. Multiple key players didn't want to play at Melbourne anymore. However, they've managed to keep those players for this season, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. What are the positives about Melbourne Football Club? Christian Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, and Kasai Pickett all decided to stay at the club. What are the negatives about Melbourne Footy Club? They haven't won a final since they won the Premiership back in 2021. They've had a cultural problem, which was last year. That was made public in the media. Max Gawn is on his last legs, and this may be his last really good season in the AFL. He's now 33 years of age. What needs to happen for Melbourne Demons to finish high on the ladder? They need Christian Petrarca and Clayton Oliver to both play at an elite level like they once did. Word on the street is they've both had really, really good pre-seasons, which is good. They need multiple forward line players to kick more than 40 goals this season, and not only just rely on Bailey Fritsch to kick majority of their goals. So, look, Kasai Pickett, he's just one off the top of my head. But, they can't just rely on Bailey Fritsch to kick the most goals. They need a few other guys to step up. Brisbane. Now, the Brisbane Lions, I believe they're going to have a premiership hangover, and I'll elaborate a bit more about why. Well, I believe they'll finish 11th on the ladder. They couldn't replace Joe Danaher with a similar caliber player during the off-season. So, look, Joe left it really late to decide he was going to retire. So it just didn't give the club enough time during the year to talk to other player managers, talk to other players from other clubs to try and, orchestrate some form of deal to get another gun tool forward to replace him. So he's a massive loss, Joe Danaher. There was quite a few games last season he won off his own boot. So, and another reason why I believe they'll have a premiership hangover like Geelong did in 2022, where they didn't play finals 2023, and Collingwood when they won the premiership 2023, and they didn't play finals 2024. Look, it's very common these days. You can win a premiership one year, not play finals the next. So, look, I think it's going to happen at Brisbane. But look, watch this space, and we'll see what happens. See what Chris Fagan's done to tweak up their forward line. That's the part of the team that sort of worries me most about him. What are the positives about the Brisbane Lions Footy Club? most of their playing list have stayed together. They didn't lose any of their gun players to different clubs. Now, Joe Danaher is different. He's retired, hasn't gone to another club. But, that's good news for the club. They didn't lose any of their good players to other clubs. What are the negatives about the club? Well, I've already said this. Joe Danaher retiring. Lincoln McCarthy is a handy goal sneak that he's had a hard run with injuries. And he's done his ACL before the season started, so he's going to miss all of this year. Look, he's a very handy goal sneak. He's a guy that's capable of kicking 35 goals in a season, but look, they do have other small forwards in their team. But look, he's a more than handy player, and it's disappointing that we won't be seeing him in 2025. Dane Zorko had a really good year last year, got All Australian, but he is getting older, and he's been a great player. However, at his age, which is 36 years of age, in my opinion, I think the game is slowly going to pass him, and you're going to see him slow up a fair bit and just play a significant amount of games where he just doesn't do too well. So I think this is it could be Dane Zorko's last year. See how he goes. Might prove me wrong to sneak in another season, but he's at the wrong age of 30. So anyway, what needs to happen for Brisbane to finish high on the ladder? One guy, in my opinion, I'm about to speak of him. He's never really played to his full potential. He's showed glimpses of being a very good player here and there. This player is Eric Hipwood. He needs to kick more than 50 goals this season. He's now 27 years of age, and he's talented enough to do it. So he's never kicked more than 50 goals in a season, but he's the type of player that really needs to stand up with Joe Danaher retiring. Look, interesting to see if it happens. I reckon Fagan's put the pressure on him to really stand up and take games by the scruff of the neck. But we'll see how Eric Hipwood goes. He's talented enough to kick 50 in a season, but they really need him to do it if they're going to play finals. Now, Port Adelaide. They're a team that have finished in the 8 for the last few years. I don't think they will this year. I predict they're going to finish 10th. Well, I believe they'll finish 10th. One is losing their gunplay Dan Houston. Last season, he was an All-Australian half-back flanker. He was traded to Collingwood, so he's at Collingwood now. They didn't recruit any gun players from different clubs during the off-season, so they weren't able to replace Dan Houston with another gun half-back from another club. What are the positives about Port Adelaide? Look, there's going to be a mutual coaching transition, which allows Ken Hinkley to coach for the rest of the year and then pass the coaching mantle to Josh Carr, which is a respectful decision from the club instead of just sacking him when he had one more year left on his contract, Ken Hinkley. What are the negatives about Port Adelaide Footy Club? At the moment, Zach Butters will be missing up to 7 weeks of the season due to injury. He's arguably the best player on their team. Travis Boak is getting old, and he's been a great player for a long time. However, at his age, 36 years of age he is, this season will show the game is going to pass him. So, look, I'll be watching Travis Boak. I'm a fan of him. He's been a great player, kind of lucky to get another year. But, look, this could very well be his last season. But, good luck to him, and we'll see what happens. Now, I want to speak about Asava Radagalia because I watched the odd Geelong game and he was playing defence at Geelong at one stage and did quite well. But what happened was he was traded last year to Port Adelaide to be a defender and play defence in their team, but it wasn't working out. So then they played him as a forward. He wasn't kicking enough goals. It wasn't working out. And he doesn't ruck as well as Jordan Sweet and Ivan Soldo. So it's very interesting what's going to happen to Asava Radagalia this year. If he doesn't take opportunities, I don't see him being at Port Adelaide next season. What needs to happen for Port Adelaide to finish high on the ladder? Someone needs to step up to replace Dan Houston, who was a great halfback flanker for the club. Also, they need another key tall forward to stand up in Charlie Dixon's absence. Now, Charlie Dixon was a great player for Port Adelaide. He didn't have a great year last year, but he was a colossus. He always put up a contest, and he tried his guts out, even though the game, it did appear to pass him last season. So, yeah, they really need a tall forward to really step up in his absence if they want to play finals. Need a big forward to kick 50 or even 60 goals. So, See how Port Adelaide goes there. Now, the next club I'm going to talk about is the Collingwood Magpies. I predict they're going to finish ninth. The reason why I believe they'll finish ninth is they still have backline issues. They haven't been able to properly replace Nathan Murphy, who had to retire at the start of the 2024 season due to too many concussions. Nathan played superbly in the 2023 season, which was Collingwood's premiership year, and helped Darcy Moore play his best footy in the back line. What are the positives about the club? They still have Nick Dacos, who is the best player in the competition, without a doubt. The recruitment of Dan Houston, who was the All-Australian back flanker last season, many believe he'll be the recruit of the year. Look, he most likely will. He's a gun player. Look, hopefully he stays fit and he's a good player for Collingwood. What are the negatives about the club? As I said before, they still have backline issues, in my opinion. They need to recruit a defender to take the opposition's best forward to allow Darcy Moore to play his intercepting marking role. So Darcy Moore doesn't have to take on the best opposition forward and sacrifice his game of trying to intercept mark, because that's when Darcy Moore plays his best footy, when he's intercepting marking and rebound the footy out of Collingwood's backline. So back in 2023, he did that superbly. 2024, his role changed a fair bit and he wasn't able to do it often as he would have liked. What needs to happen for Collingwood to finish high on the ladder? Now, they've recruited Harry Perryman, who's a pretty solid defender. Now, he's only 6'1", so I don't know if they're going to have him to take the opposition's best forward to try help Darcy Moore play his natural intercept marking game in the back line. Nathan Murphy was 6'4" tall and high, so he was a better matchup for a taller forward. Look, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Harry Perryman and if he's going to flourish in Collingwood's backline that needs a lot of help, especially if they're going to play finals this year. Now, the next team I'm going to talk about is the Fremantle Dockers. I believe they're going to sneak in the 8 and finish 8th. And why I believe they'll finish 8th, one reason is Caleb Sarong improving even more to become a top 5 midfielder in the competition, and also the recruitment of Shea Bolton, who will complement the midfield that includes Angus Brayshaw, Jaeger O'Meara, and Caleb Sarong. So he's a gun player. I'll speak a bit more about him now. So the positives about the club: recruiting Shea Bolton, who could be a top 5 midfielder in the competition if he could kick straight a goal. For example, in 2022, he kicked 43 goals and 41 points playing predominantly in the midfield. So he's very much an attacking midfielder, likes to kick goals. So, look, Shea Bolton, if he kicks straighter, he'd definitely be a top 5 midfielder in the comp. So he's a big get for the Fremantle Footy Club. What are the negatives about Fremantle? Look, Fremantle been in the AFL since the year 1995, and they've never won a premiership. They've only played in one grand final in 2013, which they lost to Hawthorn by 15 points. What needs to happen for Fremantle to finish high on the ladder? They'll need at least another 2 players to kick 40-plus goals instead of just relying on Josh Tracy, who kicked 45 goals last season. These players include Jai Amiss, Shea Bolton, or Michael Frederick to step up and kick goals. So, as I said, Fremantle, they need more goal scorers. They need forwards to be more consistent and better if they're going to play finals, even finish higher than 8 that I just said. Now, the next team I'm going to talk about is the Western Bulldogs. Look, I predict the Doggies are going to finish 7th on the ladder. Why I believe this? They usually start slow in the AFL season. They win games, they lose games, and then it gets halfway through the year. Luke Beveridge then organised his side that goes on this rampant winning streak, and they do enough to finish around 7th on the ladder. So they usually find themselves having a good second half of the year, the Dogs. So I believe it's going to happen again. They still have the talent to do it. Doggies were playing really good footy leading up to finals last season. They were stiff last season to play against Hawthorn in the elimination final loss. So, look, I thought Hawthorn were going to win the premiership last year. And in my opinion, I thought the Dogs were the second best team. And it was just a shame that they had to play each other in the elimination final. But, look, it's the way it is with footy sometimes. And if the Doggies can continue the momentum, they're going to be a very good side this year. What are the positives about the club? Sam Darcy has been showing significant improvements, going up another level in his footy compared to last season. I believe he'll be the best ruck forward player in the AFL in 2 years. He showed glimpses of his brilliance when he kicked 7 goals in a game last season. So look, there's plenty of upside to Sam Darcy. I see him being the best ruck forward in the comp when Max Gawn is retired. So we're going to go on to the negatives about the club. Now, there's question marks over Jamari Ugle-Hagen's future at the club. He's had a poor attitude to his footy, and this was evident when he went out the night before the elimination final last season against Hawthorn and played a terrible game where he only got 4 disposals. So, look, the news I've heard, Luke Beveridge and Marcus Bontempelli were absolutely filthy with him when they found out what happened. And look, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Look, I'm a fan of Jamari Ugle-Hagen. Hopefully, he gets his shit together. He trains hard. They get him back in around, round 5, round 6, once he's had a few VFL games under his belt, and he plays some good footy and he repays the faith to the Dogs. What needs to happen for the Doggies to finish high on the ladder? I've got here, hopefully Jamari Ugle-Hagen works through his personal problems and returns back to the club. The Doggies really need him to play his best footy to help them play finals. I've also got a big Timmy English needs to prove the critics wrong and have a breakout year in the ruck, where he dominates and pushes for an All-Australian selection at season's end. Look, I think he's a good player, Timmy English. He has the odd off game, and there's plenty of critics on him. But look, it's interesting to see how he goes. And if the Doggies going to finish on the higher on the ladder, they need him to have a really good year. Now, next thing I'm going to speak about is Carlton. I believe they're going to finish 6th on the ladder, even though they had a schmozzle last Thursday and they lost to Richmond. Now, I believe they'll finish 6th. They've got all Australian caliber players all over the ground. So you've got Paddy Cripps and Sam Welsh in the midfield, Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow up forward, and you've got Jake Wittering down back. So look, you've just got star talent everywhere on that field. They just need to start playing well as a team. And I think Voss will get them to play well. What are the positives about the club? Recruiting the Camporelli twins, Ben and Lucas, who are gun young footballers. Now, for the younger pod listeners out there who are listening, Scott Camporelli, who's the father, he was a gun midfielder who played in the AFL in the late 1990s. Well, I should say throughout the 1990s to the mid-2000s. He played over 250 AFL games, most of them for Carlton, and then he played the last couple of years at Essendon. So, and he's also, last I knew, he was involved with Adelaide Football Club as an assistant coach. So he's still in the system there, Scott Camporelli. What are the negatives about Carlton Footy Club? Now, Jaeger Smith, he was the number 3 draft pick last year. He's done his ACL in the preseason and he'll be missing the whole 2025 season, which is a real shame. He's a huge talent and it would have been really good to get games into him this season. There was a lot of bad luck last season when they lost their last 5 home and away games. They used 36 different players throughout those last 5 home and away games last season. Brisbane Lions, for people that didn't know, they only had 26 different players when they played in the last 5 home and away games last season. So it just shows when your gun players aren't injured, it really helps you to win a premiership. Carlton were lucky to finish in the 8 last season. They won a lot of games in the first half of last season, and they just turned into a schmozzle second half of the last season. What needs to happen for Carlton to finish high on the ladder? A fit Charlie Curnow, who plays over 20 games, needs to kick more than 80 goals, as he did back in 2023. Harry Mackay needs to stop his stupid snapshots within 25 metres straight in front of goal. He also needs to back up Charlie Curnow and kick 50-plus goals this season. I've also got here, Carlton really needs Sam Welsh to return to his best All-Australian caliber form of footy to help Paddy Cripps in the midfield. Look, Sam Welsh is a gun. He didn't have a great year last year, but look, it'd just be great to see him really step up this year. He has the potential to be the best player in the comp, Sam Welsh. So hopefully things go well. I heard he had a good preseason. So hopefully he's a good player for Carlton this year and he helps them win games. Next club I'm going to speak about is Sydney. I believe they're going to finish fifth. The reason why I think they're going to finish fifth is they've only lost one gun player, Luke Parker, to a different club. With the amount of talent they have on their list, they can replace him. What are the positives about the club? Since 2003, Sydney have played in finals 19 times and have won 2 premierships. It just shows how hard it is to win a premiership. So look, Sydney, they've been so great for so long. Playing finals 19 times since 2003 and you only win 2 premierships, it just shows how bloody hard they are to win those premierships. The new coach, Dean Cox, who was a premiership player himself when he played at West Coast, can bring in new, fresh ideas to rejuvenate Sydney's game plan. Chad Warner stayed and didn't request a trade to a Western Australian club where he's from. So there were rumours around that West Coast of Fremantle would chase him hard, but he's decided to stay. I'm not sure how long for, but he's decided to stay. He's a gun player, and that's really good news for Sydney. He decided to stay. What are the negatives about the Sydney Swans? They haven't had a great tall forward since Lance Franklin retired. Joel Amartey kicked 43 goals last season, and he kicked 9 goals in one of those games. However, in my opinion, he's not a top 10 tall forward in the AFL. Also, in the last 13 years, Sydney Swans have played in 5 grand finals and only won one of those grand finals. They have choked in the last 4 grand finals they've played in and lost them all. So, look, I think John Worsfold, is a great coach, and I'm not going to blame him for those losses. There's only so much a coach can do. These very often the coach does everything they can to get the team up and ready. You know, it's one day grand final, and you know it can happen when your players that you're coaching, they're just clearly outplayed by the opposition players, and it's happened more often than not to John Longmire. He did win 1 premiership in 2012. He is a premiership coach. What needs to happen for Sydney to finish high on the ladder? Joel Amartey needs to prove me wrong and kick more than 50 goals this season. He needs to solidify himself as a gun tall forward in this league and not a one-time fluke who kicked 9 goals in one game. It's his forward line to shine with Lance Franklin not there. Look, he's also got help with Tom Papley and also Chad Warner and Isaac Heaney. They like to attack as midfielders and hit the scoreboard. So he has got help, but Joel Amartey really needs to step up if Sydney are going to finish higher and go deep in finals. The Gold Coast Suns, I predict they're going to finish 4th this year. And I'll tell you why. I believe they'll finish 4th because they have a lot of talented players on their list who are round 1 draft picks. Damien Hardwick is arguably the 2nd best coach in the league, and he'll have the Suns play better team football this season that will propel them into the top 8 at season's end. What are the positives about the Gold Coast Suns? They've recruited John Noble from Collingwood and Daniel Rioli, who's a triple premiership player from Richmond. These 2 players are more than handy footballers that are going to really help Gold Coast win games. What are the negatives about the Gold Coast Suns? They've been in the AFL since 2011 and they've never played finals. The club has basically been a failure since being in the AFL. They've also lost Jack Lukosius to Port Adelaide. He's a more than handy player in the forward line. What needs to happen for Gold Coast to finish high on the ladder? Ben King needs to play 20-plus games this season and kick 60-plus goals. He's talented enough to do it. Look, Ben King, I watched him just before against West Coast. He was brilliant. So he kicked 6 goals, I think, 6 or 7 goals. So, look, he keeps it up. He has it in him to be the best full forward in the comp. So they really need him to, kick more than 60. And by doing so, he's going to really help Gold Coast go deep, finish top 8, even top 4 on the ladder, and go deep in finals. Another player, Matt Rowell, is a gun midfielder and needs to take his game to another level and play all-Australian caliber football in the midfield. He's now 23. He's got injured a fair bit, Matt Rowell, but he's a gun, and he really needs to play to his ability this year if Gold Coast is going to play finals for the first time. They also need Touk Miller to return to playing all-Australian caliber football in their midfield. He hasn't had an all-Australian selection in the last 2 seasons, and he's 29 years of age. So, look, Touk Miller, he's been a very, very good player for Gold Coast, very loyal. He's been there since a young age, and They also need him up and running as well if they're going to go deep into finals this year, the Gold Coast Suns. Now, the next club I'm going to talk about are the mighty Catters. Now, I predict the Cats are going to finish third this season. Some of the reasons why I believe they'll finish third, they didn't lose any of their players to different clubs at the end of last season. They've recruited Bailey Smith from the Western Bulldogs. He's a gun midfielder who won the Bulldogs Best and Fairest back in 2021. What are the positives about the Geelong Football Club? Now, since the year 2004, Geelong have played finals 18 times and have won 4 premierships. Unbelievable. That is such a great winning record. So that's a combination of Chris Scott and Bomber Thompson as head coaches. But look, that's just incredible. Geelong and Sydney, they've been incredible for so long. What are the negatives about Geelong Footy Club? Well, look, the only negative I could think of about the club is people who aren't Geelong supporters love to hate them, because since 2004, they haven't bombed out and had a long stint on the bottom of the ladder like North Melbourne has, for example. So they've just always been up there, Geelong, same as Sydney Swans. So that's the only reason why you can think negatively of the club. They've been such a good club for so long. What needs to happen for Geelong to finish higher on the ladder? Firstly, we've got his Shannon Neal needs to step up in Tom Hawkins' absence and kick 40-plus goals this season. Look, Shannon Neal, he's 22 years of age. I think he is a player who's capable of kicking more than 40 goals in a season. Look, he's very tall. He's too tall for a lot of the opponents he's going to play on. So, look, there's a lot of upside to Shannon Neal. So I look forward to watching him play when I can, because I think there's a lot of upside to him. I think he can be a good player for Geelong. Now, Patrick Dangerfield has missed a fair few games in the last few seasons, mainly to hamstring injuries. I believe he needs to play a lot more in the forward line instead of the midfield. I think he needs to short his time in the midfield. So he is someone who's quite talented up forward. His goal kicking, in my opinion, has got better in the last few years, especially with his set shots. He's always been a great overhead mark. He's always a talent that knows how to get the footy. So, in my opinion, look, they still need Dangerfield to play midfield sometimes, especially if they've got quite a few other players who are injured. But in my opinion, he needs to play a lot more forward, where he's not running around as much and not having to use his tank to push hard in footy games. Now, next person here, Max Holmes. He won Geelong's Best and Fairest last season. He needs to continue his great form if Geelong are to win the premiership this season. So Max Holmes, he is the future. A lot of people think he'll be Geelong's best player for years to come. So they really need him to step up again if they're going to finish higher than third or even win the premiership. Now, the Greater Western Sydney Giants, I believe they're going to finish second on the ladder. Well, I believe they'll finish second. Like the Gold Coast, they have a lot of round one pick talent on their list, and they'll be expected to improve even more because of this. They've managed to keep all their gun players during the off-season. Aaron Cadman, who was the number 1 draft pick back in 2022, is expected to flourish in the forward line this season. What are the positives about the Greater Western Sydney Giants? Finn Callahan is a gun midfielder who's expected to have a breakout year this season. I spoke before about St Kilda offering a mammoth contract that was 1.7 million a year over 10 years, and he said no. Look, apparently he's on very good money at the Greater Western Sydney Giants. Apparently he's on like 1.2 million a year, so he's on very, very good money, but he's expected to really have a breakout year, Finn Callahan. Another thing is the recruitment of Jake Stringer, who's expected to have a breakout year. Now, apparently he's trained pretty hard and he's had a big preseason. So it'll be interesting to see how Jake Stringer will go. Potentially he can do better. He's going to be in a better team and he'll be getting more supply on the forward line compared to Essendon. So he's definitely going to get his opportunities. Just see if he takes advantage and converts with them. What are the negatives about the Greater Western Sydney Giants? Well, since the Greater Western Sydney Giants have entered the AFL in 2012, they've played finals 7 times and haven't won a premiership. They've played in the 2019 grand final and got smashed by Richmond in an 89-point blowout. I actually went to that game and, yeah, it was just Richmond the whole way. That game wasn't good if you're a Greater Western Sydney supporter. What needs to happen for the Greater Western Sydney to finish higher on the ladder? when they have a big significant lead in a game, for example, a 40 to 50 point lead, they need to learn to capitalise on these leads and not play undisciplined football to allow the opposition to claw their way back and beat them in games. In last season's semi-final, the Giants, they had a 44-point lead against the Brisbane and they lost to Brisbane, who went on to win the Premiership. So, look, this is just the only thing I could think of. They're a great side, but really, once they've got a good lead in the game, they've got to learn to put their foot on the throat and not let teams come back and potentially beat them. Now, the last team to speak about are the Mighty Hawks. Now, I think the mighty Hawthorn Football Club are going to finish on top of the ladder. Why I believe they'll finish on top? They play the best team brand of football out of any other team in the league. Sam Mitchell does a coaching masterclass with the Hawks. You watch the way Hawthorn zone across their attacking forward 50-metre line. Opposition players often turn the ball over when they try to rebound from their defensive 50 against Hawthorn because the Hawks zone so well. So I saw this. This was evident against Sydney. So when Hawthorn got the ball inside their 50 against Sydney, they got to trap it in there for longer periods of time. Sydney just they just bombed it out of their 50, their defenders, and they just kept turning over across the 50-metre line. Hawthorn's attacking 50, and guys like John Newcomb and players like that just kept getting the footy kicked to them, and then they got to kick the ball back in there. They're forward 50 to score again. So they're just a well-zoned coach side, the Hawthorn Footy Club. What are the positives about the club? They've kept all their good players from last season. There's improvement in their team chemistry. We're seeing that this season with their 2 early wins this season. They've beaten Sydney and Sydney, which was huge. And then they've also beaten Essendon this weekend. Also, positives are recruiting Tom Barras from West Coast and Josh Battle from St Kilda. They're very, very handy defensive players. So they're going to really help Hawthorn push for a premiership tilt this year. What are the negatives about Hawthorn? Look, to be honest, they lack a tall gun full forward. Now, Marby Ochola, he's not a bad player at all. However, he's not the type of forward who's talented enough to kick you between 50 to 70 goals in a season. Also, Marby Ochola surprised me. He's actually 6'7" tall in height. I didn't know he was that big. He's a very tall guy. So I was surprised by that. They're also missing another gun midfielder who's All-Australian calibre in their team. So if they had another guy like a Sam Welsh, for example, a fit and firing Sam Welsh, he's someone that would really, really help them as well. So, yeah, that another All-Australian calibre gun midfielder would really help their team. What needs to happen for Hawthorn to finish on top of the ladder? Nick Watson, the Wiz, needs to improve and play to his potential. I'm a huge fan of Nick Watson. I reckon he could be the next Stevie Milne. It's only his second season in the AFL system this year. However, he is talented enough to kick you more than 40 goals in a season as a forward pocket. So, look, I love watching Nick Watson. I remember watching him last season in his earlier games. He struggled with his goal kicking. Sam Mitchell, he helped him out at training, and his goal kicking, especially the second half of last season and onwards, has been really good. So he kicked a few the other night, like 3 or so. So, look, he's going to be a very, very good player for Hawthorn, and I believe he's going to be the best full pocket in the comp in the next year or two. Marby Ochola needs to prove me wrong and kick more than 50 goals this season. He's going to get a lot of opportunities. He's going to get a lot of supply in their forward line. He kicked 44 goals in 2022 when he played for the Gold Coast. So he is someone that can kick you 40-odd. He's done it once. But, look, for Hawthorn to solidify themselves and finish on top, he needs to kick 50-odd goals this season and stay fit. He also needs to do this to entice the Hawks to not chase a gun full forward from another club that'll have him as the second tall forward option in the team. Now, pod listeners, I'm just going to go through the AFL ladder that I will believe is going to occur at the end of this season. I'm going to start off with the bottom team, finish at the top. So I have Richmond finishing 18th. I've got West Coast finishing 17th, Essendon 16th, St Kilda 15th, North Melbourne 14th, Adelaide Crows 13th, Melbourne Demons 12th, Brisbane 11th, Port Adelaide 10th, Collingwood 9th, Fremantle 8th, Western Bulldogs 7th, Carlton 6th, Sydney 5th, Gold Coast Suns 4th, Geelong 3rd, GWS Giants 2nd, and I believe Hawthorn will finish on top of the ladder. Now, my opinion on who I think will be the most improved player from last season. A lot of people are going to agree with me on this. I've got here Harley Reid. I believe with another solid preseason, he'll improve dramatically in all aspects of his games. He's quick. He's strong for a 19-year-old kid. He's hard to tackle to the ground, and he loves to do a don't argue to players who try to tackle him. He's spectacular. He can take hangers. He can kick freakish goals. He's 6'2" tall in height, which is about the average midfield height in the AFL. Look, they say your height, you stop growing in height at about the age 21, so there's a good chance you could grow another inch in height. I've also got some honourable mentions here who I think will be most improved players in the comp as well. I've got here Aaron Cadman, who plays for the Greater Western Sydney Giants. He plays forward, and also Nick the Wiz Watson, who I spoke about before. I believe these guys, look, they kicked around 30 goals last season. I think they're talented enough to kick more than 40 this season if they stay injury-free. So, yeah, I believe, especially Nick the Wiz Watson, they're going to be – I expect them to improve significantly more this season compared to last season. Now, my opinion of who will be the most exciting player this season. I've got one guy here, Isaac Kako. Now, it'll be his first season in the AFL this season. He was picked number 6 in the draft last year. Essendon picked him up. He's playing for Essendon. For the pod listeners that don't know too much about Isaac Kako, he kicked 4 goals and played really well in a preseason game against Geelong. He's quick and freakishly skilled. He has a good eye for kicking goals. And Essendon will definitely play him this year, and they'll hope he'll help them win games of footy. So I think he's going to be an absolute cracker of a player. I've also got an honourable mention here to Sam Laidlaw, who was the number 1 draft pick. He looked really good last Thursday night against Carlton. He won some really good contested footy, and he kicked some really vital goals. So he looks like he's going to be quite a good player for Richmond Footy Club. Now, my opinion on who'll win the Brownlow this season. Look, I think a lot of people are going to agree with me here. I think it's going to be Nick Dacos. In my opinion, he is the best player in the AFL at the moment. He was very stiff last season, actually not to win the Brownlow. He bowled 38 Brownlow votes last year. So Paddy Cripps got 45 Brownlow votes, which is unbelievable. Look, I'm a Carlton supporter. I watch a lot of Carlton games. I did not think he'd poll 45. I thought he was a good chance to win it. But look, Nick Dacos with 38 votes and Paddy Cripps with 45 votes, they're actually they broke the record for a player to get the most votes in a season. Before those two, Dustin Martin had the record. I can't remember where he was, but I think 2017 he had a stellar year and he won everything. But look, I think Nick Dacos will win it this year. My opinion on who'll win the Premiership, look, I'm going to go Hawthorn. They're the most disciplined team, and they play the best team brand of footy in the comp. So I thought they were going to win it last year, and I think they're going to be even better this year. So it is pretty hard to not think Hawthorn are going to go deep in the finals. They've had 2 solid wins so far. So, yeah, guys, that's my wrap for this episode of KeithPod. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope everyone enjoys this season of the AFL. 2025, it does look to be quite a stellar season, quite an incredible, unpredictable season, especially watching Richmond convincingly beat Carlton the other night. No one in the world would have predicted that. So, guys, thanks for listening to this pod episode, and I hope to see you guys on the next episode. Okay, see you later. See you on the next episode of KeithPod. Bye for now.